In this video, we're going to be looking over this Minolta XG-M 35mm Film SLR Camera Body. This is just the body with the cap. It does not have a lens on it, but this takes the standard manual focus Minolta SR series lenses. And my purpose in making this video is, first of all, just to check over the condition of this camera in preparation for sale. But also, I thought it'd be useful just for anybody that might encounter one of these somewhere and want to know about its condition, what things to look over. I'm going to be going through all of the features of this camera, and so let's just take a look here. First of all, before we put in any batteries, there's a few things we can look at. When you take off the lens cap, you can see right here, there's some little dents right here. And the reason that happens is because people sometimes put the lenses on upside down, and there's a little pin that sticks and hits that. It's supposed to be down, and so it engages with down here, and there's a red dot that tells where you're supposed to line it up, but people do it wrong and they end up doing this little bit of damage. It doesn't really hurt anything, but it just shows that they're being careless. So be aware that that's there. Another thing that you want to check is this aperture follower. You want to make sure that that's sprung, just like this one is, because when the lens is on there, this follows the aperture ring, and you want it sprung hard against that so that it communicates to the camera what the aperture is set at. And this one is good, so we can see that's good. This is a stop-down preview button, and we want to see this little pin move over here, and it does. This is the lens release button, and I did verify mounting a lens on here, and undoing it, it does work, so the lens mounting system works well. Up on top here we have the shutter speed dial, and it can be set on all of these different shutter speeds, as well as this A setting, and the A is for automatic, and on this camera the automatic is aperture priority. Now once it's on the A, you cannot get it back off the A unless you push this little button here, and then it releases it, so you can do that again. Over here we have the ISO, or back in this day it was known as ASA setting, and you lift this little ring here and turn, and you can see these little numbers right in here, which you probably can't see, are changing. And so you set that the way you want it. There's that 200, for example. About there. This is your exposure compensation, and you can do this +2 or +2 and -2, and that's if you're shooting in one of the automatic modes and you just want to give it a little more or less exposure, you can do that, and it'll adjust the settings that way. This is your film advance lever. Your self timer lever or control is right here. Pull that up to start the timer. Push it back down to disengage the timer. So having done this little walk around here, I should also notice inside here, if you pull up on this knob, this is the film rewind knob, and you want to know that this crank is good here, and that turns in there, okay. And you want to look at the condition of these curtains, and that looks good right there. This is your film take-up spool, and we'll be looking at this again here in the near future. And then over here on the back, you want to feel these edges, and the reason is that on cameras of this vintage, most of them had a foam light seal material in these channels here, and then this door mates up with that, and over the years that foam turns into kind of a sticky, gooey material. I see right here on this inside here, it's actually very dry and hard. So I would say that, you know, I don't feel a lot of material printed off onto these edges here, but seeing this, I would recommend that this one get new light seals. It might work just fine as it is, but I'm not sure. I've not shot any film with it. I have checked over the electronics, and it seems like they're okay. This one has a little release here where you can push this down and actually take this back off, because Minolta made some accessory backs that had some different features on them, and then you can mount that instead. So that's just a nice little feature here if you want to do that. Otherwise we can just put that back on like that. So let's start checking over some of the electronics. And here is the battery compartment right here. A nickel is a good key to get that out open. So we're going to take that door off. And then this little battery holder. And I've got a couple of batteries here. We're just going to put them in with the plus facing up like it shows. And then we're going to put this right back in here. And I always like to back this up a little bit till I hear the thread engage. Okay. And then we can crank that forward. You don't have to crank it real tight, but enough so that it holds. So now we can go over here, and this is the off-on switch. And when it's on, you can also do a quick battery check by just pressing this little button right here that also was for releasing this. When it was on A, it also lights up this little light right here if the batteries are in and working. So let's start by just setting this at 1/1000th of a second. And then we can step down through these 1/500th, 1/250th, 1/125th, 1/60th, 1/30th, 1/15th, 1/8th, 1/4th, 1/2 second, 1 full second, and the bulb setting where as long as I hold the button down, the mirror stays up, the shutter stays open, and then the cycle completes when I let up. Okay, let's set this back here on 1/25th here, and we're going to test out the self-timer. You can just pull this right up right like here. So you see that little red bar there indicating that that is activated. So now let's just point this at us here and start this. We can see the light flashing here, and we'll watch it complete its cycle. Okay, and it did. Now, as far as checking the metering in this camera, I did mount a lens to it, and I checked it against a modern digital SLR camera, and the meter settings came out very close between the two cameras, so I'm convinced that the metering in this is working. There are a few specks. When I looked through the viewfinder, I could see a few little spots. It wasn't terribly distracting, but if you're looking for a perfectly clean viewfinder, it doesn't have it. There are a few specks there. One thing we should do is look inside here now that we have it operating, and let's activate this shutter again. Oh, I gotta shut off that self-timer. Okay. I want to slow that down a little bit so we can just watch that. Okay, so the shutter's working well. The film advance looks like it's working well. In fact, we have a scrap roll of film here. Let's just practice loading that here and make sure that all of that works well. I'm going to pull that crank up so that we can get that in. Okay. And now we're going to pull this tail over, and on this camera you just want to get that hooked into, I guess there are different ways to do it. I always did it kind of, well, I'm just going to stick it in there. There's a lot of different ways you can do it, and if you watch how this works, see how that catches and is winding that on. And then what you'd normally do is then look at this film counter and then wind this until it's set for position 1, which means that now enough film has been wound in here so that you're sure unexposed film is ready for picture number 1. And so we can just shoot these. And you can see as this crank turns, that indicates that the film is moving properly. This is a very short roll of film, so there are only a few exposures on there, and it's scrap. Okay, there we've reached the end. So now what we need to do is rewind the film, because if you were to make the mistake of opening this up, all of the film is wound over here and the light would destroy the pictures. So it's very important to remember to rewind your film, and there's a button on the bottom here, and you push that, and that releases that sprocket wheel there so that you can then crank this back like this. And there I felt it break free. So now we can pull up on this knob and open this, and all the film has been wound back over here. So that's the way that you load and unload the camera. I am going to take the batteries back out because they aren't included here. But that is a very general walk around of the Minolta XG-M 35mm SLR camera body. This one issued originally in 1981, so getting to be 40 some years old. But this is a fairly nice example of one. The only thing that I think it really should have is those light seals replaced, and pretty much any one of these that you find out there that's as old as this is going to need that done. So that's not really a surprise. But other than that, it's quite a good camera. It's a fairly nice one. There's a little feature here that allows you to see the f-stop on your lens as you're looking through the viewfinder. You can actually see that as you're turning it. So that's a nice feature. Yeah, cosmetically, actually really pretty good. Not a lot of wear. There's a little bit of scuffing wear right there. Not too much hunting and pecking around the tripod socket like you see on a lot of cameras, so that's pretty good. So all in all, a fairly good example of the Minolta XG-M.